If you're a parent, I wonder how you're feeling at the moment. Maybe stressed, or stretched, or overwhelmed. I imagine there are all kinds of different things that you're trying to do at the moment. Like me, you might be trying to do some work from home, to look after the children, to do some kind of homeschooling, trying to stop the children from killing each other, and you're trying to stop yourself from losing it. It can be a real challenge to always try and be kind and patient and loving and gracious. There are lots of times this week when I found myself messing up. Even this morning, there are things that I found myself needing to ask forgiveness for. When I found myself rejoicing in the death and resurrection of Jesus and God's persistent grace. There are lots of challenges to our parenting at this time, but there's one particular thing that I've been challenged about this week, and it's the focus of my parenting. Like with many parents, Hannah and I have been given the responsibility of trying to do some kind of homeschooling with Stefan at the moment. And so I've tried to be quite thoughtful about how we've gone about that. I've looked at the materials that the school have sent home to us and tried to think about how we might use those or cover some of that ground. I've thought about what we might like Stefan to learn in an individual day or across a week. And we've tried to set time aside each day, just small blocks where he can sit down and think about some of the things school want him to be learning. But earlier this week, I found myself thinking, hang on, it's really good and helpful to be thinking carefully about Stefan's schooling, but am I as thoughtful when it comes to teaching him about Jesus? School have given me the responsibility of homeschooling, me and Hannah, but actually there's a responsibility of teaching our children about Jesus that God has given to us. It's always been my responsibility, and how seriously am I taking that? My mind's gone to one of the Psalms, Psalm 78, and I'd love just to share a few verses with you from there. So this is what God says in Psalm 78. We will not hide God's teachings from our children, but tell them to the coming generation, the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might, the wonders that he has done. He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers to teach to their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God, and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. God's word says, teach the glorious deeds of God to your children, that they would trust and hope in God. Well, the world's crying out for hope at the moment, and we have a wonderful hope in God. I've found myself thinking, am I being intentional about teaching my children about the hope that is found in Jesus? I'm very intentional about setting time aside to do some schoolwork. Am I as intentional about setting time aside to read the Bible with my children? I prepare perhaps the day before or the evening before, giving some kind of thought to what Stefan might do the next day. Am I preparing in the same way through praying for my children and for myself as we read the Bible together, as we live together and seek to grow in God's grace? Sometimes the answer is no, and at those moments I need to remember Jesus and be thankful that God is a God of grace. The rest of Psalm 78, it gives wonderful examples of God's persistent grace. I'd recommend reading it. It's a really exciting thing to see God's people rebelling against God, being faithless again and again, failing to trust God, and God once again and again and again showing grace to his people. Psalm 78 shows us the God of grace, and that's who we find ourselves depending in when we find ourselves weak as parents. There is strength there, always more grace, strength to keep going once again as a parent. Well, that's how God has challenged me this week. He has given me the responsibility of teaching my children about Jesus. I've found myself asking, am I taking it seriously? Am I more serious about the schooling, or am I more serious and do I desire more for my children to know and love Jesus?